This system, which is called the respiratory system, from the nose into the pharynx, into the trachea, into the bronchioles, and into the lungs, is what we call the respiratory system. And I was telling one of my students that the easiest thing to do when you're trying to understand your body, simply understand the organ systems. That is the best way to understand the body. We have 8 organ systems, and the one that we're going to talk about tonight is the respiratory system. From the nose to the pharynx, to the trachea, to the bronchioles, to the lungs, and then in the lungs we have some sac-like structures that are called the alveoli. So if you remember that in biology, you'll know those sacs that end at the end of every bronchiole. We have these sacs that actually take air and they cause the passage of air from the lungs into the blood and back. That transfusion of blood from not blood. That's movement of oxygen from the lungs into the blood and back. Now, why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because passing oxygen from the lungs into the blood requires diffusion. When you have oxygen in blood, you are adequate. When you have more oxygen in blood, that is what we call hyperventilation. When you have less oxygen in blood, that is called hypoventilation. Okay. So if you have low oxygen, you actually, it's an indicator of hypoventilation. You're not getting enough in the lungs, so therefore none of it is passing into the bloodstream to actually help you do different things. And remember, all your organs require oxygen. So if you're not ventilating adequately to pass that oxygen from the alveoli into the bloodstream and back, you're actually going to suffer problems, which we'll talk about. We'll be talking about this apnea. Also, when there is limited oxygen in blood, we start increasing carbon dioxide in blood, the CO2. Because again, when you take in oxygen, it's natural that the lungs have to pick up the carbon dioxide and then you exhale out. But when you have high carbon dioxide in blood, we call it hypercapnia. That is a condition of high carbon dioxide in blood. And most of you who know that in the air we have carbon dioxide. But when it's raining and then that carbon dioxide combines with water, it forms something that is called carbonic acid. It's a very weak acid. But in blood, your pH is supposed to be maintained at near neutral. So imagine if you're having high carbon dioxide in blood and your blood is composed of water. Larger percentage of blood is water. So that carbon dioxide starts to react with the water to form weak carbonic acid. Now, this weak carbonic acid is the cause of acidosis, the one that we call respiratory acidosis. The other one is called metabolic acidosis, the one that they say ketoacidosis and all that. That is metabolic. But this one is respiratory acidosis. That's why you see some people who are obese and they are struggling to breathe. They breathe very shallowly and very fast. So they're trying to compensate so that they can clear that CO2 from the blood. And I told you there are 2 organs in the body that are involved in maintaining acid and base balance. So when you have high acid in the system, the kidneys will cause reabsorption of bicarbonates to neutralize that acid. When you have high bases in the blood, the kidneys reabsorb hydrogen ions to neutralize the bicarbonates, and that's how the body controls a pH. But the other organ is the lungs. So when you have high acids in the blood, which means you're not having enough oxygen, you tend to breathe very fast and very shallowly to compensate, so that you increase oxygen and CO2 is cleared out. But when you have high oxygen, you start to breathe very shallow, you breathe deeply and very slow, so that now this oxygen can be utilized and now you can bring in new oxygen. So that's how the body controls it. So somebody telling you that you eat alkaline diets to make your body pH alkaline is lying to you, because there's a reason why you have lungs and there's a reason why you have the kidneys. It doesn't matter if you're eating alkaline diets. If any case, when they move from the mouth into the stomach, they encounter an acidic pH. So those fruits that you're eating, those vegetables that you're eating, thinking that this is going to be absorbed and make my pH alkaline, in the stomach, it is already acidic. So by the time they're getting into the stomach, they are not alkaline anymore. They become neutral. When they get into the intestine, that's another pH. When they are absorbed, is another pH in blood. So this alkaline and alkaline myth, diets myth, please, let's drop it. Okay, at least not on my platforms. Let those who advocate for the vegan diets, those who advocate for alkaline diets, let them do that. But here we will eat meat. We will eat meat. Don't allow them to lie to us that meat will stay in your stomach for 8 hours because we're not designed to eat meat. I mean, they don't have strong acids in their stomach. Now they're blaming it on meat. So we will ignore that. So now look at it this way. Here, from the nose back into the back structures of the throat, into the pharynx, this is one part. So we'll classify it into 3. This is 1. And then we have this, the pharynx, into the trachea, this is 2. And then into the lungs, that is 3. Okay? So when you hear people telling you about upper respiratory tract infection, they mean the upper bronchioles, the trachea, and into the nose. Okay, so all structures that are here, from here all the way, those are the upper respiratory tract. And then the lower ones are in the alveoli, in the lungs, and all that, deeper into that. So now, snoring apparently happens because of destruction of the structures behind or at the back of the throat. So remember, we have nerves there, we have muscles there that actually coordinate a lot of things. And one of the nerve that is very important in breathing or even swallowing is actually called the hypoglossal nerve. Hypoglossal nerve is a cranial nerve that actually controls the movement of the tongue when you're swallowing, when you're breathing. So when you have problems with that nerve, you start having problems with swallowing, you have problems with moving the tongue, and now it obstructs the throat, and now you start snoring so that you can just get it out and start breathing normally. But look at it this way. We start here, from the nose into the pharynx. What will cause you to start snoring, or what will cause you to have sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea, here, is when you have either a deviated septum. So you see, between your nose, we have that separation of the two nostrils. That's called a septum. Now, if you have any inflammation or any deviation in that septum, it can actually block you from breathing. That is one. Number two, we have enlarged structures. Which structures? Here, all the way, we have the tonsils, we have the adenoids, and then we have even most of you know it as, is it uvula? You've seen children who have an elongated kirimi. They go to hospital and it's chopped off. Have you seen that? It's very common where I am right now. We call it the uvula or the uvula, whichever name you want to call it. So that stuff that hangs in your throat, when it grows larger or it gets inflamed, that is what we call the uvula. So an expansion or an inflammation of that uvula, an expansion or inflammation of the adenoids, and an inflammation of the septum or deviation of the septum, or also the tonsils, that will bring you obstruction. So look at it this way. There are people who you talk to, and every morning they're busy talking as though their nostrils are closed, are clogged. Like you see the white people, because of the weather they have there, their adenoids and their tonsils are actually swollen. So they keep on talking as though unaongea kama mzungu, like somebody is pressing your nose. Okay, so those structures, when they're inflamed, is a problem. And what causes inflammation of these structures? That is where the point comes in. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, if you have children who have constant, what do we call them? What do we call it? Most of you call it tonsils. Tonsils. Mtoto wangu akona tonsils. My child is suffering from tonsils. All of us have tonsils, and tonsils is not a disease. The condition is called tonsillitis. 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 TIS for inflammation. So inflamed tonsils is what your children are suffering from. And what causes inflamed tonsils is sugar. But I know those of you who have taken their children for tonsillectomy, they know that these children sometimes they are chopped off the tonsils and then they are given ice cream. The doctors and the ENT surgeon gives them ice cream. Something I'm yet to understand why. So you go feed your child with sugars, the ice creams, the chocolates, the bread, the sugar in tea and all that. You give them the biscuits, all these things. And then they get inflamed tonsils, and your first option is to go to an ENT surgeon and they tell you have to chop off these tonsils because they're enlarging. But sir, or madam, what caused the enlarged tonsils? That is what we are not ever targeting. We don't want to clear the cause of the enlarged tonsils. We want to clear the tonsils. Why? Yet those tonsils are there to show you that there's a problem. Look at it this way. When you hurt your toe, at your groin area, there is that thing that swells there. When you have a wounded toe, there's something that swells here at your groin area. So if you hurt your toe, do you end up chopping this lymph node here in your groin to heal the toe? You don't. So tonsils, swollen tonsils, which is tonsillitis, actually shows you that there's an inflammation or there's a disease inside your respiratory tract. So they are there to be part of your immune system. They are there to indicate that there's a problem in the respiratory tract. So fix the problem. If it's pneumonia, fix it. If it's the sugar problem, fix it. If it's an infection that is affecting the same tonsils, fix it. If it's the tonsil stones, go to a dentist and let them be removed, wash out, clean it up, and then heal from that. But chopping off inflamed tonsils is criminal. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all. So therefore, please do not chop your children tonsils. Don't take them to those mitishamba or cut hizo tonsils. Please don't do that. Simply fix the diet of the children and you will not have to suffer recurrent tonsillitis. And you've seen that this is basically being the normal, the new normal. Every time children are coming to hospital is tonsillitis, tonsillitis, tonsillitis. And they're given very strong antibiotics, like amoxiclav, the combination. You people call it augmentin. They are given azithromycin syrups. They are given floxapen syrups. It's not healing. And now the doctor decides, because we've been giving you all the antibiotics, we've reached the peak of antibiotics. Now what do? Let's just chop these things off. And then he chops them off and gives your child ice cream. What are we doing? It's the same concept like you going to donate blood and you're given soda. Doesn't make sense, right? So do not chop them off. So now, those are the three things that actually cause clogged of the nasal pathway. So we call this the nasal pathway. So blockage of it, the septum which is inflamed or which is deviated, we have then large tonsils, and then we have also a long or elongated uvula or inflamed uvula. Those are things that you can deal with, because if you change the diets, we don't have to have that. But this is in the children. Here we are talking about adults. Okay, so of course I'll touch about children, but these conditions are based on the conversation on adults. So number 2, we have now from the trachea, not from the trachea, from the pharynx into the trachea. That is the second part where we are targeting. And what causes problems there? Of course, nerve damage. Of course, obesity, which causes the pressure. I will talk about the obesity hypoventilation syndrome, where you'll see an enlarged neck. Those people who have a fat neck, it's called a bull's neck. So when you have that big neck, those muscles are actually exerting a lot of pressure on your trachea and on your pharynx, and that becomes a serious problem, because now you will struggle to take in air. And there are so many challenges that are coming in by you just struggling to take in air. So one, of course, there are medicines also here. Apart from just having that double neck or that big neck. And ladies, you've seen most ladies having this line here looking like a wrinkle or something, and it looks very attractive. They call it a beauty wrinkle or something. You've seen that? Basically, that's a double neck, and this chin that is actually falling here. You've seen it in most ladies, right? That is obesity. That's a sign of insulin resistance. That is one sign of people who snore. And the weird part is, when you're snoring, you don't even know. Your partner is the one who keeps on waking you up all the time. He's lacking sleep because of you. And you know very well, if you lack sleep, the following day you wake up very angry. You're a very angry person in the morning. You have you're so just emotional. And then you're tired. You can't concentrate. You just want just a chance to sleep. We call it somnolence. That somebody's talking to you and you just sleep. Like, what is happening? This guy did not have sleep. So you can imagine that. So if you are working actively, lucky you who works in the office, you can take a nap. There are people who work in industries, in heavy machineries. Taking that small leap of faith in your somnolence, your fingers are gone, because the machines will take you out. Okay. So anyway, so we have also drugs like alcohol. We have drugs like benzodiazepines. Now, you know very well there are people who chew cat, mira, all night to keep awake and to have fun. And then after that, the following day, they are taking diazepam to sleep. Diazepam is a benzodiazepine. That's a drug that actually suppresses the respiratory centers, the breathing centers in the brain. So it doesn't cause you sleep just because it's a hypnotic agent. No, it causes you sleep because it suppresses the respiratory centers, and now the least amount of oxygen that you're taking in is left to just supply the brain, to keep the brain functional, which means the rest of the body does not have any supply of oxygen. Now the body has to send you into stupor. You have to sleep now because it has no enough supply of oxygen. So diazepines, the drugs like morphine, the narcotics, the cocaines, the morphine, and you know very well, doctors, nurses, pharmacists are abusing, and healthcare providers are abusing pethidine, which is a narcotic. They are abusing it to just get high, the fake high. There are doctors who cannot perform a surgery when they have not injected themselves with pethidine. There are people out here who are so addicted to tramadol. That's another narcotic. Imagine that. So you take tramadol, it goes and suppresses your breathing centers, and now you have a problem in your throat. Now it also suppresses the nervous transmission towards your throat. And guess what? When you suppress those nervous transmission, the tongue just lays back and it closes up into the esophagus, into the trachea. Now you get problems in breathing. So why would you abuse these narcotics? Why would you abuse tramadol? Why? Why do you find the aimless need to just be high all the time? Why? Alcohol is part of this. And you know very well, nowadays, ladies are using mchele. Mchele is very famous in Kenya. And mchele is part of the benzodiazepines. And this can actually kill people. So mchele is what we call the flunitrazepam. Flunitrazepam is a drug which is called Rohypnol. This drug has been banned in Kenya because of its illegal use. But you walk into Isli, you still find it. Very, very good one, very highly soluble in alcohol and water. You put it in alcohol, it solubilizes, and you see alcohol already suppress the breathing centers. Alcohol causes the relaxation of muscles of the throat, and then now the tongue is falling back, closing your ability to breathe. So you've taken alcohol, and then somebody goes ahead and adds in Rohypnol. That's a death sentence. This is a guy who is going to die. So those of you who have suffered the consequences of mchele, you're lucky to be living. You're lucky to be alive, because this is double tragedy. Alcohol and benzodiazepines is crazy. Okay, good. We also have drugs like steroids, drugs that people use for asthma, trying to open up the bronchiole so that you can breathe. They end up suppressing. They end up actually affecting the nerves and the muscles that supply the throat, and you end up getting into problems. And I've been looking at this topic, and I've been wondering, how is it possible that obesity is not tackled? Like, look at the United States. 40% of the population is obese and overweight, but nobody's talking about it. They are the ones who are actually dictating terms to African countries on how to eat, nutrition. But there are countries people are obese, then nobody cares about that. But the same country has actually made it clear that the big pharma has to come up with things that will help people who are obese and are unable to breathe when they are sleeping. Imagine that. Imagine, we know very well that the issue that is coming in with snoring, with sleep apnea, with obesity, hypoventilation syndrome, we know it's obesity. We know it's insulin resistance, but no one wants to target that. Everybody is interested in targeting, in actually giving you new remedies and new technologies to handle sleep apnea. I have told you about CPAP, CPAP. Please go and just look at CPAP, how it works, how it functions. There's another one that I saw that you put in your mouth at night so that it prevents your tongue from going back. And you wake up with a very tired jaw in the morning. You hate the experience. But they're not telling you anything about that. If in case they give you Ozempic, and as you lose weight, you can use this new technology. I mean, why is it that way though? So anyway, let's continue. Now, after the pharynx, we now go into the lungs, the trachea, the bronchioles, and then the lungs and the alveoli. Anytime you're struggling to breathe, you're getting into hypoventilation. And I've told you hypoventilation will lead you into hypercapnia, high CO2 in your blood, high carbon dioxide in the blood. That is going to cause you an acidic media in the blood. And acidic media around the cells is dangerous. It will actually cause you heart attack and kidney failure, dehydration, and all that. People have gone to a coma because of CO2, hypercapnia. So which is hypoxia. Hypoxia means, or hypoxemia means low oxygen in blood. When you have low oxygen in blood, you have high CO2 in blood. That's a dangerous situation to be in. So anyway, most of the things that happen on the pharynx or the throat and the lungs, most of the issues that happen with breathing, difficulty in breathing here and here, is obesity. Here is a bull's neck, the fat neck. And here is, of course, the fat that is accumulating on your rib cage. That actually inhibits the expansion and relaxation of the rib cage and also the flow of the diaphragm. So obesity is criminal in somebody who is trying to lead a healthy life and somebody who is trying to maintain a healthy respiratory system. Now, you might want me to sugarcoat it and call you chubby. You might want me to call it, oh, you know, you're plum, you're pumpkin. But the truth is you're fat. And if you're fat, you're going to suffer the consequences of your fatness. People are losing weight. Why don't you just put in some effort to lose that weight? Why do you think that your fat neck is going to make a difference? It's not. Some of you, I call it cephalothorax. You have a neck fused with the thorax. So you don't even have a neck. Yes, Koi, plus size. I even saw in Kisumu, they have a plus size, I don't, they call it the plus size models. So they even have a plus size show. For these fat people just walk on a runway and they are celebrated for being fat. There's another clip that I was sent to, I think it's in Indonesia or something, that men, the success of men is measured by how fat they are. Imagine that. The bigger the pot belly, the fatter you are, the more ladies you'll be given, the more women you will attract. So, fat man is equal to value. Now we are telling you, a lean man is a valuable man. That's a man with no disease. That's a man with no estrogen. That's a man who. eh? Pana. No way, no way. We cannot justify obesity that way. At your Miss Chubby Kenya. Miss Chubby, what nonsense is that? And nowadays, I even see in fashion houses. There's one along Kimathi Street. We even have those. We call them dummies. We have obese dummies. Kenya tunaenda wapi? We have obese dummies to just convince the fat people that you can actually come in here. We have something for you. And it's placed on the balcony. When you're passing through Kimathi Street, you just look at it and you're like, I'm fat, but you see, that shirt can actually fit me. So we are encouraging fatness by all means. That's why we are telling you carbohydrates are energy-giving food. So keep being fat. Hey. So now even the companies that make clothes have decided to make fat dummies for the obese. And then they're dressed in an XXL shirt. Tuko serious. Hata kama ni biashara. Let's be honest and serious at some point. So obesity goes a very problem. Obesity is just a problem. It is. And we have to admit. And you know what? Right now, I see our celebrities marketing Ozempic injection for both diabetes and weight loss. And right now it's very expensive. I think it's 99,000 shillings or so. That's just 100,000. But look at it this way. You see, at this moment in time, we're looking at it as, they are bringing it here is a problem. Give yourselves 5 to 10 years, because right now, even in Nairobi, you walk in Nairobi and every 5 men you see, 2 are obese, 3 are overweight, which means only 2 people look fit. One is lean, the other one is super thin, and thin is actually the new fat. So out of 5 people, you're wondering, what is happening to people? These are people who line on a bank line and they get so upset. Why is the line so long? And they found it there anyway. But they line on KFC and they stick there a whole 2 hours waiting to be served. They don't complain. They're just drooling with saliva. They're just waiting for that moment to just grab that crunchy chicken. And then they come out, they lie to themselves, they'll fast. If you're obese, fasting is going to be helpful to you. But for you to just push even a 24-hour fast, for you to attempt and finish a 24-hour fast when you're obese, is no joke. So don't lie to yourself. You just eat unhealthy foods and then fast. My friends, sometimes, have you ever slept with somebody who is snoring? Or just alone? Or beside somebody who is snoring? You look at this person, you're like, I can slap you so badly. A snoring guy or a snoring lady, you're like, madam, but during the day you're dressed up so sexy. You just came here to. You're like, right. So all of us have to lack sleep just because you're snoring. I have got to go to bed earlier than you, because before you come to bed and start snoring, and you realize these people, because they have because they have problems in breathing, their body switch off so fast. So immediately he's or she's in bed, she starts snoring. Immediately, you're like, bro, you can't even take 5 minutes to just load and get some sleep before you start snoring. They get into bed and I'm like, my ears are bleeding. Now you have to keep on waking them up. Hey. Eh? And then the next minute, before you even catch a sleep, they are again snoring. It is so annoying. So if you're fat, lose the fat, because snoring is so bad. It's so weird. But anyway, we will move on. We will help you fix it. And these are home of fixing. If your child is snoring, simply know you've affected their muscles in the throat. Sometimes you can't even blame them. It's the diets. Sugar destroys nerves, you know very well. So sugar destroys nerves. Seed oils, wheat, All these things come in and destroy the nerves that actually supply the throat. So if your child is snoring, why don't you get them off the sugars? Just take about a week or so. You're the one who buys sugar, so a child does not decide what to eat in your house. Why don't you just take them off the sugars and the modern lifestyle? Okay, good. So this is what happens when you have loss of air inside the lungs. One, we start by actually getting hypoventilation, which means low oxygen in the lungs, and then this hypoventilation causes you hypoxemia. Hypoxemia on one side, on the other side we said hypercapnia. Hypercapnia means high carbon dioxide. Hypoxemia means low oxygen in blood. So this other side you're having low oxygen, and this other side you're having high CO2, because remember, the more you take in oxygen, the more you release carbon dioxide. Okay, for those of you who have not adapted to anaerobic respiration, okay, you breathe through your mouth and all that, you're actually taking in low oxygen, and then as you take in low oxygen, your CO2 in blood starts to build up. Carbon dioxide reacts with water to form weak carbonic acid, while weak carbonic acid dissociates to release hydrogen ions. When you release hydrogen ions, in medical terms or in science, hydrogen, which is H plus, those are hydrogen ions, that is what we call acidity. So when you have high CO2 in blood, the chances of making acids in blood are high. You release hydrogen ions, you start going into acidic pH. The pH goes down because the lower the pH, the more acidic the blood is. So the pH goes down, acidity goes up, you start killing the cells, you start killing the organs, you start getting dehydrated, you get into a coma, and the next thing, we are in a hospital, you have a mask for oxygen. Imagine that. And now all that saving that you've made in the last 2 years has just gone down the drain. Before you build that dream house, before you take your children to those private schools, now you're taking yourself to hospital to just put an oxygen mask. Calculated in terms of minutes. How many hours were you on oxygen mask? Write it down. So you think your job is going to cater for that?